Hello.
Hi.
How you doing?
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Christmas week. Did you enjoy the holiday?
I did enjoy the holiday. Did you?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think we're feeling a little bit hungover right now. This is some back story. Eric and I struggled a little bit in committing to a topic for this
Yeah,
episode.
okay.
We both did.
Did we? Or was it just you?
It might have been just me.
I think it was just you.
Yeah.
Just saying.
I,
Just saying.
I kind of felt like we could not get on the same page though, because there was a whole crop of Oscar hopeful films to choose from. But we either saw them individually. We already saw our two favorite movies that are Oscar hopefuls, so that's One Battle After Another and Sinners, so those are considered the top two contenders for Best Picture. But everything else we were kind of intermittently excited about, or one person was excited about and the other person wasn't. And so I do feel I think I felt like we did struggle a little bit to get aligned. It wasn't just me.
Sure.
Okay. So then, anyway, so today, and there were lots of reasons why we hemmed and hawed about what we're actually going to talk about today, but I actually do want to talk about it in a way of honoring his legacy. But today we're going to talk about the films of Rob Reiner. Um, Eric has seen quite a few of them. I've seen quite a few of them. And I would say that The Princess Bride and When Harry Met Sally are movies that I can quote almost by heart. And so I wanted to focus today on, and then Eric just recently watched Stand By Me, and I rewatched it with him, and I had not seen that movie in years. And so it was really interesting as a rewatch. But I really wanted to talk about, I didn't want to focus on the tragedy around Rob Reiner and his wife's death, because it's so horribly tragic. But I am really just, it had this huge, his passing had this huge emotional impact on me because I realized what a profound impact his films have had on me. But when I thought about why they've had such a profound impact on me, I actually could not. Normally I don't struggle for words to come up on why if I love a film, like why I love a film and or why I dislike a film. And the other thing that's interesting to me is that we spend a lot of time in this podcast talking about technical aspects of filmmaking. So we talk about score, we talk about production design, we talk about pacing and editing, we talk about the writing, we talk about the directing. Like we tend to break it down into its component parts. And I actually, in thinking about Rob Reiner's legacy, I found myself unable to do that. I found myself unable to like really think about I say, oh wait, yeah, the writing was really good. Oh wait, the acting was really good. But I actually did not talk about his like visual brilliance, for example, the same way that I would talk about a Denis Villeneuve like in Dune, which is obviously a very different kind of movie than the movie that Rob Reiner makes. But in a lot of ways, I actually think that the movies that Rob Reiner made, and it's horrible to say that in the past tense, but I think that the movies that he made are some of the hardest movies to make look good because they're people. They're very people centered. And so I want to delve into that a little bit, but why don't we start, why don't we start, do you want to start with Stand By Me or I also wanted to share my first impressions of Rob Reiner.
Yeah, I mean, we could go through just our experience of him as a whole. I feel like my favorite, probably I go back and forth on what my favorite of his is.
Okay.
Um, it's either When Harry Met Sally or Princess Bride.
Hmm.
And I think I might give it to When Harry Met Sally just because like that's the pinnacle of its genre.
Yeah.
Like it is just like
It's the perfect movie.
there's no better rom-com that is as equally funny and emotionally compelling. And like I think a lot of things that fall under the rom-com genre kind of pale in comparison
Yeah, they're
to
so terrible.
yeah,
They're
they're
so cheesy and shallow and
easy.
terrible.
Yeah.
Yes.
And that's a shame because I think what he created with When Harry Met Sally was perfect. And I didn't want to talk about Rob Reiner until I had seen Stand By Me because
Hmm.
before that I had only seen three of his films, but now I've seen four, which is still not that many, but that was one of his pinnacle works as a director.
Yeah.
And it
And
fit.
considered to be one of the most classic coming of age stories ever. Yeah.
And I really, really loved it. And I think like it's right, it's another just amazing movie that he
Yeah.
created, and I just have even more respect for him, you
What
know.
did you love so much about it?
It felt so um raw and like grounded, and just perfectly encapsulated in its time.
Yeah. I like that the boys were just the right mix of I like that you could tell that the boys in Stand By Me, you could see all these misimpressions of them, and some of them were justified impressions. Like they were considered to be like the misfits or the juvenile delinquents or the future juvenile delinquents. So they were considered to be not good enough or not role model boys. So I liked how flawed they all were, but their bond together was, I liked the fact that they were just such real feeling characters, even though all of the actors played them a little bit over the top. You
Yeah.
know what I mean?
I I thought they were perfectly cast.
Yeah,
And
they were perfectly
it
cast.
is funny because, none of them I think were super like well trained at that point in
No,
their like because they're kids obviously. Um but they still went through, I saw a video obviously of the behind the scenes, and they went through a couple weeks of like improv theater training kind of thing,
yeah,
with Rob like directly, who was an actor before he directed. So he just took them through what he knew. And it sounded like, from the way that the actors described it, it just sounded like a really fun like summer camp,
yes,
kind of thing.
yeah,
And that's like the vibe that you get from the movie, is like it's like they're on a fun trip, but it doesn't shy away from how serious what they're doing is. They're finding a dead body, and like they actually have to live with the reality of that.
yeah,
And it's not something it's fun. It's funny. It's actually very funny and whimsical, but that in no way takes away from how serious it is. And
yeah.
and yeah,
Before you saw the movie, I actually thought that I actually worried that you might find it too sentimental, like too cloyingly sweet or obvious, and you did not find it so.
I think because it's not stereotypical. Especially the writing was not like cliche. The music choices, especially, and just the design of the movie. I think that makes it so well respected. There's something, in the aftermath of this horrible tragedy that like I just realized about Rob Reiner's films, is that they do look beautiful. Because people cut together have been making edits of his films put together,
Yeah.
and there's just so many. I had even before I had seen Stand By Me the few days before, like I was just seeing these really eye-catching shots, and just this imagery that actually seemed a little like consistent throughout like the different movies.
It's
So
funny that you say that, Eric, that you say that it looked really beautiful or that all of his movies look beautiful because that's what I said. I don't actually look back. Okay, so there are certain scenes in Rob Reiner's films that I remember that are stuck in my head. But I always thought that it was because of the dialogue, and now I'm wondering if his sort of cinematography or his art direction or his, was more so subtle that it didn't hit you in the face like some movies do, or like some you know what I mean? Like some cinematography, you look at the shots and they're framed like so stunningly gorgeously. And with Stand By Me as an example, um, I remembered certain shots, but more for the what was happening in them and less for how they looked, you know? And I think the only things that really stuck with me were them walking, like the long shots, the wide shots of them walking across the railroad, following the railroad tracks, and then I remember the colors being felt really saturated, so the color was gorgeous, and you really felt plunged into a summertime in rural Maine or wherever. I think it's Maine, it's supposed to be Maine. But I don't actually remember him as being a visual director, a visual, like I don't remember there being stunning cinematography about any of his films, including The Princess Bride, by the way, which is told to me like a fairy tale. And all the sets look like very artificial in a way because it's supposed to be like a fairy tale, like it's supposed to be some fantasy fairy tale land. But anyway, that's just me. So, and I do remember sort of the scene of when Harry Met Sally, when they walk through the autumn leaves in the park and they're talking. But I think that there must be some magical chemistry or alchemy of Rob Reiner's movies where I look back and I don't think, oh my God, I remember that image in my head forever, but I remember what happened in each scene.
I think it's like the feeling, like the nostalgic kind of sensation that you get
Yeah.
from remembering those characters and what they were going through.
Yes, that's what this is my point I want to make.
Yeah,
I was so invested in the human relationships, in the relationships in all of Rob Reiner's movies. And I wasn't just invested in the main protagonists to each other. I actually remember even watching them very young, being very invested in how the characters related to one another on every level. So the fact that Jordy's dad was indifferent to him and didn't care about his writing, and then
Gordy.
Gordy. Sorry, that was Jordy. Gordy's dad. And then Chris kept on encouraging him and his brother. Like, you know what I mean? Like the way that he related to his brother and the way that he related to Chris, his best friend, was in which it was so beautifully drawn in terms of those relationships up between all the different characters, And so I think that that is what amazes me about Rob Reiner is that he doesn't, how in not great movies you lose track of characters like they just fall off the face of the earth or they like I don't think you ever lose track of characters in Rob Reiner's movie. I think you
It doesn't
know.
matter how minor their role is
That's
too,
right. That's
Like
right.
honestly, I think Miracle Max was only in the two or three scenes
Yes.
in Princess Bride, but
Yes.
he's like everybody remembers his line
Yes.
because he's
Yeah.
because it's Billy Crystal, but
That's right.
yeah.
Have fun storming the castle.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway, so that's what I wanted to ask about. But you think that they're beautiful, the movies. You thought Sam
It's
Raimi was
just
beautiful.
I mean, if I hadn't had the opportunity to reflect back on his works now, it's not something I would probably that would be a standout.
Yeah.
But when you actually look at it, now I'm just remembering so many images.
Yeah.
I can't say the same about This Is Spinal Tap. This Is Spinal Tap is just like a
It's a
fun
mockumentary, yeah.
mockumentary.
It invented the whole genre of mockumentary.
It's not particularly like beautiful necessarily, but it is worth like the same kind of analytical uh viewpoint because it all is adding up to whatever experience Rob is creating. But I yeah I just remember so many vivid images now, like especially since I had the pleasure of having a professor who was the art director on Princess Bride.
Really?
I think I told you
I,
this. Yeah, his name was
I really
Richard
remember.
Holland. Richard Holland.
He's not the British guy, is he?
He is,
Oh,
yeah.
the one you made fun of.
Yes. There's an infamous video of me making fun of his accent, and he walks up and sees it.
Just because we have them.
Yeah.
Richard Holland, welcome to my crib.
As you can see, we have a whole banner of things. Look, the chairs.
Sorry. Um, but and of course I was sick the day that he played his own DVD extra from Princess Bride.
No way.
Yeah, so I don't actually. I mean, I have the Criterion, so maybe it's on there. But but in other lessons that I was with him on, he would describe some of the sets he made. Particularly, he made there's like an old style ship for that one scene that they're
Yeah.
sailing on the ocean. They had to figure out how to make that ship because they were going off of like a medieval kind of century, design, and they were just trying to find something that fit. And eventually, they found just like these drawings and like images of ships, like old ships, and they just recreated it. So now, when I think about it, I just see that shot of like the ship on the water and then the dock and the trees kind of surrounding and like creating a vignette for like this ship that's on the water. It's
Yeah.
just such a beautiful image, but it's also one that's super familiar. Like
Yeah.
it's like a common photo I will just take on my phone, like of like whatever setting, like having the trees overhead and then like that kind of creates its own image. So in that way, I see why it's like a little tougher for to like remember the actual cinematography
And the
of
art
his
design
films.
and the
But I think
production.
it's just because it's so grounded and familiar to the audience, like of any things about everyday life that are beautiful.
Yes, that's a great way to put it. I think I would put it a little bit differently, but I think that what you just said is a really great way to put it. I think that Rob Reiner in terms of his production design and his cinematography. I think it is the difference between foregrounding something and when it becomes almost too loud. So I think that the Princess Bride's design so perfectly suits that the tone and the character and the story. So it's not particularly obtrusive for me. And I do remember that the two to this. I was laughing all throughout The Princess Bride when I first saw it because I realized that there were just so many moments of absurdity. Like when I first watched it, I did not know what I was watching. I think I watched it when it first came out, and I didn't know what I was watching. Okay, so I was like, is this a comedy? Is this like a weird like fairy tale? Like what is this? And then I realized, I think it was right around the time when they got on the ship, and then he kept on saying, and Wallace Shawn kept on saying inconceivable again and again and again and again. And he said it with a lisp again and again and again. And I was like, oh, this is a totally absurd comedy, you know? Oh, and the moment where I absolutely belly laughed, by the way, is when he's playing the man in black, he's sword fighting, and the man in black says, Wesley says, "I'm not left-handed either," and he switches his sword to the other
Trevor
hand.
just posted a little funny skit about that.
Oh, really?
Ping pong.
Oh,
Yeah.
funny. But anyway, I guess my point is that I remember thinking, looking at that ship scene in the water and thinking that it looked like they were in a pool, like a swimming pool. Okay, and so like it looked like they were, it looked like I could actually see lights in the water and that they were, so everything felt a little bit artificial. And Max's workshop felt a little bit exaggerated. Everything felt a little exaggerated. And I accepted that because the genre of the movie was comedy to me. Like, it was such an absurdist comedy that everything looking a little exaggerated, including the fact that there's like a giant and like a, like and Inigo Montoya, like everything felt a little bit dialed up to the 10th degree.
Yeah.
So I think that that is actually in a lot of the tributes to Rob Reiner, they have said that they are so amazed at how he was able to work across so many different genres. So I think that that is actually the real way to describe how I feel about his lack of a distinctive visual stamp. Like I think I could watch a Christopher Nolan movie without knowing it's a Christopher Nolan movie, and I think I would know it's a Christopher Nolan movie. I'm not sure that I could watch a Rob Reiner movie and know instinctively that it is a Rob Reiner movie. And I think that that speaks to his versatility rather than like a lack of distinctiveness, you know? I just think that he made movies that so perfectly embodied their genre and in some cases invented them because this is Spinal Tap invented the mockumentary, basically. And so I think that he so perfectly embodied genres that he lived in them in a way that made him less of a Christopher Nolan type of director and more of a just a master of all trades type of director.
Yeah.
That's how I feel about that.
I agree. There's like a lack of like refinement, in that sort of area because he doesn't, it seems like to me that he doesn't need absolute control over everything.
Yes,
Um,
I agree with that.
so crediting him with the cinematography is a little ridiculous because it
Yes.
seems like, he definitely
You're saying that the
you every
control freak directors would want control over
right.
that, right?
Well, or
Or
would
they
just
were such a
would
trust.
have way more like kind of exacting detail, or you would just hear more about how they influence certain things
Right,
all the time. Well,
right.
especially that's how it works now. Rob Reiner's movies are older, or I mean, his most popular ones are older and like more ingrained in like kind of older Hollywood, where I think and also his reputation that's coming out now is that he was just a very friendly person, like
Yeah,
very
warm and loving
warm,
and embracing.
loving, just was so ready for any ideas that weren't his, and ready to add that, especially from his actors, but also his creatives that he worked with.
Yes.
So like the point you were making about like how things look artificial and stuff,
Yeah.
it's like when I like in animation when you can kind of see like an artist's like sketches, like
Yeah.
traces of like an artist's sketches. It's
Yeah.
like showing that human hands were on this, human hands made this thing.
Oh, that's a really great way to put it.
Like especially when it comes to like the set designs, like especially when they go to the top of the cliffs of insanity
Yeah,
and
yeah.
they fight in that whole like
Yeah.
that just looks like a little courtyard
That's
that they
ridiculous.
made.
The ship looks like like a swimming
Yeah,
pool, you
yeah.
know?
And it's like
Just
even
like the boulder where Fezzik, waits.
right.
That giant rock just looks like a giant rock made out of paper mache.
Yeah, yeah.
It doesn't look like a real rock.
It tells me that even for these small scenes that
Yeah.
are like overall not the thesis of the movie, like
Yes.
it tells me that we're coming together for this one moment, like to create this everything for this one moment so you can enjoy it and love it as
It
much as
makes me
you
want to
I
cry.
know, I'm sorry. And
It makes me want to cry. Okay.
it shows collaboration, it shows longevity because it's not so solely attached to his identity that once he's gone they'll go away. They like that's why so many people it resonates with so many people, especially
Because so many people were allowed to be a part of it.
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
Um
That's kind of that's kind of
but
a
that's what makes this particular time so devastating. It's like I was we were both apprehensive to talk about this just because it's so devastating. Because we ideally, you know, we would want him to stay and make sure that uh, he could still offer more. But unfortunately he can't. It makes me want to find out more. There's so many stories,
yeah,
that's the thing that he was really good at was just telling these little stories. And
a
now,
huge range. Yeah.
yeah, now anything I hear about these movies, like I latch onto, and it just gives me more hope.
Yeah. Um, I want to bridge from that last point, which would kind of I thought you put beautifully. That his movies reflect the collaboration of and the input of so many people, and I think that's especially true, by the way, because in all of the movies that I love, the performances were astonishing, and I think Rob Reiner had something to do with coaxing those performances. Like, I just think that they're indelible, like those performances, they're amazing. I just every time I think about those performances in every single, like, I think about how perfectly Meg Ryan and Billy Crystal meshed together, and that one of the criticisms of newer generations watching when Harry Met Sally is that they never think that Billy Crystal's hot enough because he's like this
I
look.
actually did experience that in the last watch. It's not that it's that he's significantly less attractive than Meg Ryan is. Just comparatively. If you're putting them up against each other, like
I know, but they're so believable
yeah, they
together.
are. Yeah.
They're totally believable together.
Hmm.
Anyway, the point I wanted to make about I agree that another way to describe what you were saying about this, everybody can see themselves in these films because he let everyone bring their best selves and their best inputs into the films because he was so generous and collaborative. Um, so another way that I think about that, and this relates to a point that I often wonder about actors. So sometimes when I watch a performance, I think to myself, is that person just playing themselves, or are they actually giving a true artistic performance, And so I think that a lot of times I'm astonished at the depth of which acting is like the breadth of what an actor can truly do. I'm often reminded of the distance between who an actor is as a person versus who they are as a performer, And I have a great deal more respect for acting than I used to because I used to always think, oh, they play themselves, and actually I don't think that's true. However, I want to say that the reverse is true of Rob Reiner because I think that Rob Reiner I think that he put so much of his spirit and his love into his films. I think his films are really personal. And so I think he has turned what I used to think of as a criticism of like acting, for example, but I think that he puts so much love into his movies and to his craft. And I think that that shows because the people in them feel so real. Like they feel so real. And it's not even just the people or the characters feel so real because, as I said, The Princess Bride has a lot of caricatures in them. But in every single one of those bizarre characters, even the Sicilian, you could see very recognizable human characteristics in every single one of them. All right. So Inigo Montoya has to say the silliest lines. You killed my father. Prepare to die. I will say to the six-fingered man, you killed my father. So he has the silliest, most hyperbolic lines, okay? But at the same time, he invests them with so much feeling and emotion about his grief and his animating grief. And there's this really beautiful example, of a woman on TikTok whose father died. So she put out a TikTok saying, I hope that Mandy Patinkin says this because I don't know if he intended Inigo Montoya, if he acted it as a way to deal with grief, but I found it such a cathartic way to deal with my grief over losing my father. And Mandy Patinkin responded to this video and he stitched it and he played and he said, I did mean it like that. I did mean it as he goes, I know it's a funny movie, but I meant it as a cathartic expression of grief, as a way to like, it's not just about the avenge. Inigo Montoya realizes once he's killed the Six Finger Man that he wants his father back, and so I guess my point is that Rob Reiner made these movies that just felt so deeply personal and so recognizable to us. Even this goofy musicians in This Is Spinal Tap are recognizable to me as real people. So
Yeah.
I just wanted to say, and I want to talk a little bit about how that translated into Rob Reiner as an actor too. Because do you have
Yeah.
anything to respond?
Well, one clip I saw from that Stand By Me behind the scenes
Mm.
was that Rob Reiner said, like, I never, something about when I direct actors, I don't want to ask them to do something that I wouldn't be able to do myself. Like that,
Oh, interesting.
because I was because I was an actor and I have that experience of being an actor. Um, I want to make sure that I'm not asking them to do the impossible, and that whatever I'm asking of them is something I realistically feel is accurate or doable. And I think that's like that can definitely be different from a director who like recognizes he doesn't have that experience or the acting skills necessary, but they want to like they think they can pull it out of an actor who's really amazing, or like tell them to go above and beyond. Like he doesn't need to do that, because it's just to service the character in the story.
Yeah. My favorite Rob Reiner films are comedies. Stand By Me is less of a comedy, even though it has very many funny moments in it, but it's more of a coming of age. But The Princess Bride and When Harry Met Sally are definitely comedies, and there are so many funny jokes that I can quote from memory. Um, but I don't think that I actually think that the best comedy in the world is about really just, it's like when you are walking that insanely thin line between all these powerful emotions and laughter, And so you're constantly like grief and laughter, heartbreak and laughter, love lost or fear of failure or
Yeah.
insecurity and laughter.
There's moments in your life that you
Yes.
could trace to wanting to watch that movie to be like a sort of cathartic experience
Yeah.
of that. Like
Yes.
I watch The Princess Bride when I'm sick. I watch, people watch When Harry Met Sally during New Year's because it's
Yes.
about New Year's, and
Yes.
then Stand By Me maybe when you lose a friend or you lose a loved one,
Yes.
and then This Is Spinal Tap when you just maybe when you like are going through a tough time creatively or like career wise,
Yeah.
and you just need something stupid to kind
Yeah.
of let you
And
go.
I actually think that I think that's a great rundown, Eric, but I actually think that there's so multi-purpose in that
Right,
way.
yeah.
Like I actually think that one of the things when I rewatched Stand By Me with you the other night, I actually think that Stand By Me, that last line when he says, I'll never have friends like that when I was 12 years old,
Yeah.
that to me captures the nostalgia and your nostalgia filter, you recognize that it's imperfect, that there were all these like grim realities that were intruding, like the fact that Chris's father was abusive and what's his face is um, the guy who's played by Corey Feldman. His father was abusive and the one with the messed up ear, the deformed
Yeah.
yeah, and so
Teddy.
you Teddy, that's right. So you recognize that there were all these like really grim realities at the same time, but all he could remember or focus on was just that summer, that experience, and the fact that he lived through those experiences with his closest friends. And he's totally candid about the fact that he lost touch with with Teddy, and with
Yeah. I thought
what?
that was really
Yeah,
beautiful.
yeah,
It's like
yeah.
it's like a stupid person would be like, Oh, like it's like Teddy, when
Yeah,
he hears Gordy's story,
yeah,
he's like, "What happened to the fat guy
yeah,
after?
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Like, what happened to him?" Like,
yeah,
that's the kind of we all have that innate desire,
yeah.
but the reality is that it's not. It always doesn't always
Yeah,
work
and
out.
he was also processing the death of his brother.
Mm,
Do you know what I mean? There were so many things that coincided. There were so many grim realities that surrounded it, and yet all he could remember was how close he felt to his friends and what experiences they had gone through.
yeah,
So for me, that's a moment where, as you know, I have a really sharp memory. And I think back to these beautiful moments from childhood or from being a teenager, and I think back to these moments with my friends. And those relationships have either gone or they've changed or they could never be recaptured in the same way. And that's what I think for me, what Stand By Me is all about. You know what I mean? It's about how you can look back and you can still see what was real and powerful and important and wonderful about a certain time in your life. Whereas you can also just say, it's not here anymore. It's
yeah,
gone. It's gone forever.
yeah. I mean, in the same way, you know, dealing with this grim reality that was how we lost the
Rob Reiner,
Reiners,
that's right.
and then having never seen Stand By Me and watching that,
Right.
like, and using that to contextualize how I feel about it, was really beautiful because I mean, it's just really surreal. And I think when I watch that movie in the future, I'm gonna think back to this moment, and think and obviously come to terms with how horrible it was, but also the reality of what he left behind, which is
Yeah.
his work, his body
Yeah.
of work, and his movies
Yeah.
that were really great.
So, I want to mention a little bit about Rob Reiner as an actor when I first encountered him, which I know you are not familiar
I'm
with.
not familiar with that at all. Yeah.
Yes. So, there was this really influential, powerful television show, um, All in the Family, and the star was Carol O'Connor, and he played this racist, ignorant, white guy living in
Who
Queens.
did? Rob Reiner?
No, Carol
Oh,
O'Connor.
oh, okay.
And All in the Family was was created by Norman Lear, who is known as one of the most legendary directors, writers of all time in comedy. Like and he's still alive. He just turned 100 years old, which is just insane when you think about it. Major activist, considered to be a really powerful influence on Rob Reiner's own activism. And people who have spoken about Rob Reiner's activism, I actually know people in the business who worked with him, and they say that he was one of the most real activists you could possibly imagine, like deeply, deeply engaged. He wasn't one of those guys who just showed up to be the face of something. If he cared about a cause, he would put his heart and soul into it. He would raise money, he would show up to events, he'd be an ambassador for it in the most authentic way possible,
Yeah.
and incredibly knowledgeable about his causes, his favorite causes. So anyway, I was introduced to All in the Family when I was a kid. It was in those days when you had like very limited choice of television shows, and I can't believe that those days existed. But like back in those days, like when I was watching All in the Family, number one, it was not really an appropriate show for like a 6-year-old, and number two, it was a very realistic, gritty sitcom set in like 1970s America in Queens, and Archie Bunker, the central character, was just this real blowhard, ignorant, get off my lawn type of character. So what was amazing about his character, Archie Bunker's character, so Rob Reiner played his son-in-law, married to his daughter, who was played by Sally Struthers. And Archie Bunker would, so his son-in-law, played by Rob Reiner, Archie Bunker thought was a liberal, pinko, communist guy, like really like sort of a hippie type of guy. Like he really hated all of his liberal views. So Archie Bunker referred to him as Meathead. So everybody knew him as Meathead. I don't even remember what his real name was because his character was known as Meathead, you know? And so I just want to say I really powerfully hated that show when I was little. You know, I recognize that it was actually a work of genius, but I just hated it because it depicted an America that was not really friendly to me as a little Asian, Korean girl living in the middle of a very white rural, in the countryside, So I instinctively recognized Archie Bunker as the enemy. But the genius of that show and the writing of Norman Lear was that it would occasionally take these disparate characters like Meathead being this liberal guy, this sort of blowhard liberal guy, and Archie Bunker being this blowhard ignorant white guy, and it would occasionally do episodes where you powerfully got them to cross bridges, you know. So there's one episode where Meathead and his daughter, they're leaving the show. So they're in the show, they're moving to California, and Rob Reiner's character takes the time to tell Archie Bunker's, Carol O'Connor's character, how much he's meant to him, how much he appreciates his support, even though they butted heads a lot, even though they've clashed, even though they did not agree politically. And Rob Reiner does it in the most, I mean, it is the most poignant, beautifully acted scene. He's just so himself. He's just so honest and authentic. And I think that that is such a gift to be able to say to somebody straight out how you feel and to say it plainly and to be able to just get it out there. That's not easy for a lot of people. Like I've talked to
let
you
alone like on camera,
on
on like
camera. That's
on a
right.
shoot.
Yes. But I mean, I've talked to you a lot about this, Eric, just in terms of our own characters. We sometimes take for granted what comes easily to us or what comes more easily to us than it does to other people, which is the ability to speak our feelings either to each other in person or in art. So the fact that I think that Rob Reiner, that's his gift as a director and as a creator and as an actor. I think his gift is that he is able to convey human emotion in the most authentic, plain spoken, very present way. And his movies, all the things that Eric and I talk about all the time on this podcast, like music, music, everything like that, all that stuff is supporting the central humanity of his stories and his movies. It's not something that I set apart. So, for example, I picked apart, we just watched Fantastic Four, which I liked quite a bit, but I picked it apart into all its component parts. And when we do this podcast, we're often picking apart the components. We're often saying, well, it's like talking about a meal where you say, well, I like the chicken, but I didn't like the mashed potatoes, but I did like the green beans. So we are almost always talking about it. But I think that this might be a short podcast episode, by the way, because I think that what we react to with Rob Reiner's movies is the whole. It's the humanity of it. It's the people. It's the story. And I don't feel like actually picking apart his movies. That's why when went back, I thought, I don't know if I could, pick out sort of the images or the music. Although I love the music in Stand By Me because it's very period appropriate. I don't remember any kind of music or score in The Princess Bride. I don't even remember it. Oh, I do remember When Harry Met Sally because it used all those nostalgic standards, like it had to be you, like those standards. But other than that, I don't really remember the score of the music. But that's what I think Rob Reiner's genius is. And I think that it almost does it a disservice to talk about it, to break down his components, because I just think he's a beautiful human being who made beautiful human movies.
Hmm.
So.
I mean, just a quick note on the not remembering. I think it's funny that this is Spinal Tap is about a English rock band,
Yeah, the music was awful.
and the music was awful.
Terrible.
And I don't remember what that sounds like at all. And that was kind of the joke, is that they were terrible.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's you just remember how it makes you feel. And
that's right. You just remember how it makes you feel.
and it's funny, I consider all of his movies that I've seen to actually be very adult, like they're about very adult themes,
That is true.
of like love, or of
Friendship.
friendship, and death, and you know avenging your father. All that's actually
Grieving
pretty,
your father.
grieving your father. I mean, pretty serious stuff, but it's done in such a way that invites everybody. I mean, and I think probably a lot of people in your generation remember remember those movies from their younger days. When those had come out. And that's really powerful. That's I've said this before, but that's my favorite kind of media, is the media that stands the test of time, not just in the cultural space, but in a person's life, that it can last as long as it does.
Yeah.
And that's what he's done with his career. I have one friend who When Harry Met Sally is his favorite movie,
Yeah.
and he's seen it like probably over 30 times. Like, And I can't
I
say
actually think I've seen it over 20.
I can't confidently say that I've seen any movie in my life like more than 10 times. You know,
Yeah.
I looked back because I remember that I wrote about This is Spinal Tap for a school essay.
Oh, really?
So I went back and read it. The assignment was to analyze a scene from a movie, I think, and break it down based on the editing and how it was done. So I broke down the scene from This is Spinal Tap when Christopher Guest's character shows Rob Reiner, who's the playing as the documentarian, the amps in his
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
studio, and that's where you get the famous turn it up to 11.
Yeah.
Like it does make me think like, did they have to make amps that go up to 11 for that? But it's when you look at it, it's such a simple drab scene, like nothing
Yeah.
really happens.
Yeah.
Except, Christopher Guest just shows like Rob Reiner like the amps and stuff. But when you actually when I don't know if this was actually part of the assignment, but I literally broke it down like this is exactly how long this shot was, and then this shot, and then it cut to this shot, like literally picking apart as you wouldn't do with Rob Reiner's
Yeah.
movies, but doing that. And in doing so, I like was able to just connect why that scene was able to work and why it was so funny. Like, there's no music. Like, it's a movie about a rock band, but there's no music
Yeah.
in the background. It's just like empty, and it's really awkward. And then the way, it was shot like a documentary, but it also was cut together specifically to enhance the comedy. And then the kind of awkward tone and really just like sitting there, especially since people thought that this was like a real rock band,
Mhm.
like it all just contributed to that realism and stupidity. I have been really stuck on the idea that you have to treat every scene like it is your movie that you're making, and
Oh,
because it
interesting.
is. Like for the films that really really work, every scene is just as important as the entire movie. Because if you're not giving the amount of time and effort that you are for every single scene, then the scene doesn't work or it's like not as important. So why are we even spending time on that to begin with? So even something as stupid as that scene, when you actually look at it, like it created a cult classic, line and movie that stands the test of time. It's
Yeah.
really great.
I actually feel the least removed from this is Spinal Tap.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not like it doesn't make me cry. I mean, I've only seen it once, and actually, I went to go get DVDs today, and it was on the shelf, and I was like, I don't need this Spinal Tap
Yeah,
on
I think
DVD,
the
you
mockumentary
know?
really works on me. Like, I
Yeah.
don't think I think that I can see the humor, and I know that Christopher Guest went on to make a whole thing about it, a whole genre about it, but it doesn't really work, even
Yeah.
though it spawned like
It spawned
all
so many. It
it
spawned The
spawned so many,
Office,
yes,
Parks and
everything like
Rec.
that, yes. But it's just not my thing. Although I think it was a funny movie. Like,
Hmm.
I think that actually for me the funniest moment of this is Spinal Tap is when they were going through airport security and they were like, "What is that?" And it was a cucumber wrapped in foil. They were like, "Why do you have?" They didn't even question. He was like, "Oh, sorry." He was like, "Oh, that's it.
Yeah.
It's just a cucumber wrapped in foil."
Yeah.
Anyway, random stuff like that. But I think that my all-time favorite, I just want to put a
Hmm.
stake in the ground, is When
Yeah.
Harry Met Sally.
Hmm.
And I think that going back to one of the earlier points you made, I've always thought that the genius of that movie was in Nora Ephron's skit. So I love is script. So I love Nora Ephron. She was a renowned writer, renowned comedy writer, and her book of essays is hilarious. She just has a very wry New York voice when she talked. So I always thought that the genius of that movie was in the script. And then I read all this lore about that Rob Reiner had this suggestion and he had this suggestion. And then I think that the performances really like anchored that every single performance. And so I think that it's exactly what you were saying earlier, that the collaboration that's present in that movie, the script is, I actually have the script on my computer here, because I downloaded it just to see what it looked like, and it is exactly, what you see on screen. So I think that that movie is so, 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 so funny. It to me, it reminds me a little bit of what I thought was genius about Seinfeld, which is that there are so many things about When Harry Met Sally, just like there were so many things about Seinfeld that apply that you can make a joke You could take any one of those jokes and apply it to your own life, you know. So when, like, for example, Meg Ryan is crying because she finds out that her ex is getting married. And she was like, I'm gonna be 40. And he goes, when? And she was like, I don't know, someday. And then he was like, he was like, you're not gonna be 40 for like several more years. And then she says, Charlie Chaplin was still having kids when he was 70. And he was like, yeah, but he couldn't pick them up. So stuff like that. I just think about that stuff all the time, you know. And the other thing that I love about their characters are so beautifully realized, which I think is a really beautiful combination of directing, script, writing, and performance, you know? And so you totally buy that when Billy Crystal says to Sally, when Harry says to Sally, you know, you're the worst kind, you're somebody who's high maintenance who thinks that they're low maintenance. That's like a very classic, recognizable archetype. Whereas he is like this guy who just makes a joke out of everything and makes a bit out of everything. But then at the same time, that makes it harder sometimes for him to deal when he's genuinely just depressed or he's genuinely upset. You know, he doesn't know how to work out his feelings, you know? And so I just think that the characters are so
Yeah.
recognizable and so beautiful.
I I just I miss I miss those when those elements of a movie were more prioritized. Sorry, like because I think right now most studios have the priority of making sure it looks and sounds amazing, you
Yeah.
know? Like
Yeah.
uh and I just don't give a fuck if it looks like shit. I'm sorry. I don't care if it looks like shit, if the lighting is bad. Uh Okay, the only thing that has to be good is the sound. Like
Yeah, yeah,
that's kind of
it's
the
gotta be
only
good.
thing that has to be good. Everything else could be shit. Like you just need good characters and a good story. And that was you could tell that was Rob Reiner's priority. Um but mainly because it was for him, you know, because it was his stories, you know,
Yes.
and what the stories he wanted to tell that he really cared about.
Yeah.
And I know Princess Bride is based on a book.
Yes.
Um
It's yeah.
and so
I have the book actually.
yeah, where are good adaptations, you know, these that are like that?
Yeah, I know.
Like that was done because again, another thing is like the story about the boy and his grandpa, about his grandpa reading the story. It's such a small, tiny element of the story that like doesn't isn't like what the movie is really about, but like it's what you're left with. It's like as you wish, you know, that's like the last line that his grandpa gives to Fred Savage's character. So
Do you know what's interesting about one of the things that just made me think what you just said about why aren't there movies being made like that? You know, like just really good stories, really great characters, very human stories. Um, it makes me wonder. I always picture what happens to movies these days. Number one, I think that the movie making environment is brutal. There's so many pressures on it, and there's so many ridiculous pressures on it too. Like there's a lack of willingness to take risk and to find true creatives, and everybody's looking for new IP, but instead of looking truly looking for good IP, they instead keep on making sequels, you know, or like Disney makes, you know, they instead start to create cash cows. So Disney makes live action remakes of its classics. Like that's a perfect example of what I think of as happening with movie making. And if you do try to make like a true real movie, you either get overtaken by your ambition or lack of support, or um, the studio gets involved, right? And you've had to beg for financing from multiple different sources. Like you've had to get it financed from every. There was a joke about this recently. What was the joke where Saudi Arabia was part of it? Oh, it's all these mergers. When people were talking
yeah.
about, yeah, the acquisition of Warner Brothers by
Oh,
Netflix.
you saw that video
Yeah,
where
yeah, yeah.
before they start the movie,
All the yeah, including Saudi Arabia.
yeah, yeah.
So in other words, you know, you have to beg for financing to get your movie made, right? Because nobody has budgets anymore for some reason, because people aren't going to the movies anymore, and there's not as much ad placement going on. So in other words, your movie gets poked and squeezed and pulled out of shape in every way possible, and you have all these notes that are being handed down to you, like it's not testing well enough. Can you make the heroine this, or can you change? And oh, I don't agree to that casting.
Yeah.
Okay. So my point is that it feels like you're fucked when you're trying to make a movie and you're trying to make a movie that's just a story, a good story
Yeah.
about people that people will identify with.
Yeah.
And so I think that another one of Rob Reiner's greatest legacies is that he was able to make the movies that he wanted to make.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I don't know if that can happen anymore.
Yeah.
I actually don't know
It's
if that
kind of a
can.
privilege that's only given to people who prove themselves, but the threshold for being able to do that is like
Yes.
getting crazier every day, you
Yes.
know?
Well, you know what's weird is that Ted Lasso is a little bit like that. It's a different kind of challenge because it was an episodic, it's a TV series, But Ted Lasso came out of nowhere,
Yeah.
I mean, Jason Sudeikis and his writing partner Brendan Hunting made that series based on a series of parody spoof ads for the NFL. Like they it was like some type of and they his character was supposed to be a total one-off. And when Jason Sudeikis was still married to Olivia Wilde, she was like, "No, you should actually turn this into a TV series." And they turned it into a TV series that people responded to so deeply. They responded to it so deeply. And to me, that series is all about like workplace dynamics, human interactions, and also just about being the best version of yourself. So, but Ted Lasso is like a phenomenon. Most of the time, people are making movies or TV series, both, by the way, that are like dark and dystopian as fuck.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
everything's like kind of grim
Yeah.
these days. Or if they're doing like rom-coms, they're doing them on Netflix or on the Hallmark Channel or on Lifetime, and they're terrible. They have
Yeah.
no quality whatsoever. They like they star D-list actors who have no talent whatsoever. So I guess my point is that Rob Reiner could make movies that people wanted to see that had great performances. There's nothing flashy about them. They're just really wonderful, like heartwarming stories. Why can't people? Because I think that a lot of movies are fucked from day
Yeah.
one.
You know what? You know what
Day
this
one.
you know
Get on that, studios. Sorry.
you know what this conversation reminds me of?
What?
I was just watching I was just watching Elf a couple weeks ago,
Yes.
and there's a whole plot line of like how Buddy's dad is just so obsessed with his work.
Hmm.
It's just because he has this pressure. He's like, and he writes children's books. It's like
Yeah.
children's books are supposed to be like, you know, the kid books for kids. Like
Yeah.
why would it be so serious? But he's getting yelled at like by his boss, to make a good book, a children's book. And in these meetings, he's like, okay, so we have this story on a farm, like, and like there's like a tomato on the farm. He's like, no, 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 no tomatoes. Like kids fucking hate that. It's like, oh, okay, we won't do that. Like that. But then he leaves that, and then he creates a book about Buddy, like which is based on his whole story that he went
Right.
through with Buddy, and like thinking about it, first of all, I think that was original, right, for the movie,
I don't know.
like. All right, I don't think it was based on anything. If it was, then maybe.
I don't remember the movie well
Uh,
enough.
but like, you think it's like kind of just like a story out of nowhere. Like a guy lives as an elf, gets to be an adult, like, and then
Right,
he has to
right.
go to New York, all this stuff. Like, it's just kind of random. But because there was that emotional connection,
Yeah.
I mean, in the world of the story, like Hobbs had Walter Hobbs, that was his dad, like had this whole journey, personal journey, and he decided to put that on the page, like, and it was obviously a really popular thing.
Right.
So, and that's where real art and um, popular stories come from.
Yeah.
Um,
I think
they're
that,
just not willing to invest in that if it's gonna flop.
yeah. I think if Hollywood takes risks, I don't think that making films like When Harry Met Sally and The Princess Bride are huge risks, by the way. But they tend these days to be much smaller independent films that nobody sees. They're not that popular. They're not that widely seen. Like I actually think I watched My Old Ass, that film that you guys watched, and I actually think that's a very sweet movie
Mhm.
and very much of a coming of age movie. And so I think that that movie is feels similar, but it was so small and hardly everybody saw it. Whereas I think that Rob Reiner's films are widely seen, like
Yeah.
widely like consumed. Generations, they become quote unquote classics. So it feels to me like Hollywood wants to take risks. If Hollywood wants to take risks on movies and respect the director's vision and respect the director's process, they're going to do it on giant sprawling sagas, right? Like
Yeah.
Oppenheimer,
Yeah.
or novel concepts like Barbie.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, or the brutalist, like these sprawling epic adventures, are the ones that tend to like get made and get given the huge budgets. And so people are like talking, for example, we talked about this when we talked about One Battle After Another, but that is Paul Thomas Anderson's biggest budget so far. It's also his most sprawling, in terms of like plot and all these things that happen, and the most ambitious in terms of themes. And so I think that Paul Thomas Anderson has made his quote unquote Oscar contender as a movie. But I want to see if people are having so many problems getting people to come back to the theater. I think that they should be going back and watching movies like When Harry Met Sally, because it's a movie that you want to experience first with an audience in a theater, and then you want to go and watch it a million times over on streaming or on DVD,
Yeah.
and you definitely, I think I saw Stand By Me in the theater. You definitely want to see Stand By Me and be with an audience in a movie theater and feel connected to each other and to what's happening on the screen. And then you want to watch it a million times over. I really feel that way about Rob Reiner's movies. So I hope, I don't remember who made My Old Ass. It was Maisie somebody, I know. But anyway, there are like sweet little movies that have come across like that. I think you also, several years ago, Sing Street was a great example of
Hmm.
that. So Sing Street and My Old Ass, these small, beautiful little gems of movies, they should be made on a bigger scale, and they should get more of an audience, because those are the types of movies, these human stories of like coming of age, becoming who you want to be, um, encountering bumps along the way, but having a really powerful shared experience, both as a moviegoer, but also to what's happening on screen. I really want to see that, Eric. I really, really want to see that. And I'd love to have a genre of movies like these movies will make me feel things in a way that I don't feel
Yeah.
emotionally manipulated, or I feel like I've seen the story 1,000 million times before.
Yeah. The Rob Reiner's movies aren't anything big.
No,
They're not they're
no,
not sweeping epics. They're not huge blockbuster sensational
no.
moments, but just how deeply ingrained in our culture and in the history of film like they are, like proves
Yes,
how valuable they are.
that's
It
right.
uh, doesn't have to be smashing box office hit
Yeah.
like but that's all that's really important to studios these days is to like make make that or bust.
I really, really hope that Hollywood finds the Rob Reiners, really finds the Rob Reiners, and that we get to know their names the same way that we know Rob Reiner's name. That filmmakers who make films like him are allowed to build a career the same way that you talk about Paul Thomas Anderson, or the same way that you talk about Christopher Nolan. So that's one thing I want to say. But I really want to say, if there is such a thing as an afterlife, that I really hope that Rob Reiner died knowing how much he meant to so many people. I think he, by all accounts, was so humble. But when I think of somebody who meant so much to so many people, his work meant so much to so many people. And not just the actors and the crew who worked with him, but everybody who's seen one of his movies. I am so filled with gratitude. And I definitely had a feeling with Chadwick Boseman when he passed that it was way too soon and there was so much that we had not seen. I think that Rob Reiner was incredibly generous in giving us so much of himself to see. And even so, I feel like his life was cut short too soon and in such a tragic fashion.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I am so grateful for what he gave us. I just want to say.
Yeah.
So, so, so grateful and so thankful that we have his body of work.
Yeah. I don't often say or think about like favorite directors. It's not something I like dwell on because I care more about the films and uh, how they and my experience with the films, and not necessarily the person who made them. Except as much respect as I have, but I feel like I can confidently say that Rob Reiner is one of my favorites, and I think that's on the basis of just how all the films I've seen and their impact on me and their impact on the world. It shouldn't be understated.
Yes.
And even people who are not super film savvy or super into film, like will you can point to his films and just how many classics he's made, and it can, you know, show how influential he was as a director.
Yes, I had one more thought, by the way.
Yeah.
Remember when I cited these small movies like My Old Ass?
Yeah.
And I actually think that one of the directors who could, ironically, because he has one of the best picture contenders, I think that Ryan Coogler could be a Rob Reiner in the same way. Because Creed, the first Creed, is so, and I understand that Fruitvale Station is the same way. Creed captured these beautiful human interactions between all the characters,
Mhm.
between Creed and his adoptive mother, between Creed and his partner, between Creed and Rocky,
Yeah.
and so I kind of love that
Yeah.
about Ryan Coogler as a director.
I I
So,
agree.
yeah.
I agree, and I think Sinners gave me hope that he like has that in him,
Yes.
and he can only do good. My worry with Brian Coogler is that because of his relationship with these studios and how
Yes,
how
yes.
how much pushback he's gotten
About
for
owning
for
his own
for
rights.
the most frivolous fucking things.
Right.
I'm worried that he will or he will get boxed into like making pressured into making like box office hits and stuff and
Yes.
like blockbuster movies
Right.
because he's shown that he's really good at making blockbuster movies
That's
like
right. That's right.
but Sinners was so personal um and more grounded
Yeah.
and not based on existing IP um and and the studios like were kind of hesitant
Yeah,
about
yeah, yeah.
supporting that
That's right.
so I have real hope for that aspect of him as a director. I do worry though.
Yeah, that's so okay. That's right. And also, that's exactly our point about Rob Reiner. He was allowed to make the movies that he wanted to make. He was allowed to tell the stories that he wanted to tell.
Yeah,
So let's again return to that point,
yeah,
okay?
yeah.
Let's have more directors like Rob Reiner who are good to the people that he works with and who tell the stories in a way that resonate with us. Don't get in there and box people in or try to like think only from the point of view of IP or not. Just do it for us, like for the people who want to go and see movies and fall in love with them and watch them again and again and again until we can recite them almost by heart. So I will say this, and I'm glad we did this, Eric. I am glad we talked, even though it was hard at moments. But anyway, I'm really happy, and it was lovely to have you here for the holiday. And I hope even no matter how busy you are, however our circumstances change, we can keep these conversations going in some form or another. So I love you so much.
Love you too. That was a great conversation. Thank you for talking with me about route running. Alrighty, we'll see you next time.
See you next. Oh, wait, what episode was this, by the way? I
Oh, we didn't
forgot.
even say.
Was it 40?
Oh, it is. It's episode 40.
Wow.
And
Okay.
you know what? That's fitting, I
This
think.
concludes episode 40 of the
Yeah.
Mom and Eric podcast. For those of you who listen or who watch our clips on TikTok or on Instagram, thank you for staying with us through this journey. And this was fun. So I love you very much.
Love you too. Alrighty.